Okay, so now that you've learned all of this great information about the PSAT, we're going to talk about going from the PSAT to the SAT. The good news is 95% of the content on the SAT is exactly the same as the PSAT. There are three major differences. The SAT is slightly harder. The math is a little bit harder. There's an essay that's 25 minutes long, and the critical reading is a little bit harder. But most of it's exactly the same. The biggest difference that really challenges most students is that the SAT is much longer. It's 4 hours long. So now I'm going to show you a breakdown of the test. What is the biggest difference that you noticed from this diagram, from the one that we looked at when we saw the PSAT breakdown? Back there, what do you think the biggest difference is?
There's a lot more happening on this one.
Yeah, this is kind of crazy. Like, I look at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. It does make sense. The biggest difference is that this test is almost 4 hours long, so there's more sections. We have 3 math sections, 3 critical reading sections, and 2 writing sections, the essay and then a different writing section that's only 10 minutes long. There's also this green part that you see here that says experimental section. So not only do you have to take the SAT to get into college, they also experiment on you while you're taking it. The thing about the experimental section is that maybe you'll take it and you'll notice there's an extra math section. There's no way to know which one is the one that they're experimenting on you. Treat them all exactly the same, just know that it's there, so you may, when you're taking the test, either get an extra math section or an extra critical reading section. SAT scoring is very similar to PSAT scoring. The only major difference is that it's scored from 200 to 800. So those PSAT sections that you saw that were from 20 to 80, just add a 0. There are 3 sections that are scored: math, critical reading, and writing. Again, each section is scored 200 to 800. The national average is roughly 500, 1,500 total. When doing scoring, some things to note are specifically what questions you should be guessing on and which ones you shouldn't. So for the SAT, 1 raw score point is gained for each correct answer. And this is the same for the PSAT. So when you're looking at your PSAT score, you can also kind of keep this in mind. A fourth of raw point is taken away for every incorrect answer. So for every answer that you put that's incorrect, they take away a fourth point. No penalty is given if you admit a question. So what we recommend is you shouldn't just guess on everything. If you guess on everything, then you're going to get points taken away that you really didn't need to be taken away. If you can eliminate one answer, then it's worthwhile for you to be guessing, because it will help you out in the long run. The odds are just there. I could show you some crazy math formulas that would explain it, but we've done a lot of research on it, and it is definitely worth it to guess if you can eliminate one answer. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the ACT. The ACT is another test that your student can take to get into college. All colleges have to accept the SAT or the ACT. I get a lot of questions, being in the Northeast, about which tests colleges prefer. They will accept either. There are some differences, so we're going to talk about them now so you can kind of get an idea of what the differences are. Originally, the ACT started out in the Midwest. It's kind of all over now. The ACT has 4 sections: English, reading, math, and science. Each section is scored on a scale from 1 to 36. The difference between the scoring on the ACT and the SAT is that the ACT does not have a guessing penalty, that all the sections are averaged together. So say you get a 21 on one section, a 24 on another, 25 on the other one, and 21. They'll add the 4 together, divide it by 4, and give you the average. So the national average is 21. This is a breakdown of the ACT. What is the biggest difference that you see here on the ACT from what we looked at for the SAT?
It's much simpler.
It is much simpler. What they do on the ACT is they keep all the sections together. The science section, you do it all at once. The reading section, you do it all at once. So this is something to consider when choosing what test you're taking. If your student is going to be better at testing English all at once and getting it over with, you may want them to do the ACT. If they like switching gears and they're going to get bored from taking a 45-minute English test, then maybe you want them to take the SAT. It really depends on the student. You'll also notice that it says total time with essay is a little bit longer. The essay is optional on the ACT. Most of your counselors I would talk to them about it, but most of them, and we recommend that you just do the essay. Most schools are gonna wonder why you didn't do the essay with it if you submit it without it. It's 20 or 30 minutes. It's really, really not that difficult, so we usually recommend that you do the essay. So this chart looks kind of complicated. We've talked about a lot of the differences, so this gives you an idea of what some of the differences are between the PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT. Some that we have not talked about yet, the PSAT and the SAT questions usually go in order of difficulty. So if you notice on your score report that you have back from the PSAT, the questions are typically in order of difficulty. The ACT questions are not in order of difficulty. The science section is a big one that's different on the ACT. The science section is not something that you should be scared of. It's very similar to the critical reading section. Usually all of the graphs are on there. Another difference is the math is a little bit harder on the ACT. It goes up to trigonometry. However, the way that math is asked on the ACT is a little bit more straightforward and less tricky than the SAT. So there are various differences. Math only accounts for 25% of your score on the ACT. It's 33% on the PSAT and the SAT. So if your student's really strong in math, you may want to have them take the PSAT and the SAT because it counts for more of their score. The PSAT and the SAT are reasoning based, and the ACT is content based. The ACT looks more like a test they're going to see in school. The PSAT and the SAT are a little bit more tricky. The biggest challenge on those two tests are tricky questions and just kind of fitting it all in. On the ACT, the biggest challenge is really time crunch because you have so many questions in just one period of time that you have to answer them all. The next thing we're going to talk about is SAT subject tests, which I'm sure you've heard about. Each test is 1 hour in length. You can take multiple tests on one day. So on, say, any day of SAT offering, so there's one coming up on March 10th, that's not really popular for SAT subject tests. It's more the May and the June. You will also be able to take subject tests. These are achievement-based, measuring knowledge gained from college-level courses in all of these areas listed here. The thing about subject tests is most schools don't require them. A very, very small number of schools that are the higher level schools require subject tests. They usually require 2. These tests are structured a lot differently than the SAT. They are more based completely on content and look more like a test they'll see in school. So say your student does really bad on the SAT math, that doesn't mean they're going to be, if they're in calculus, they may do great on the math subject test because it is structured more like a test they're going to see in school. Some schools will accept the ACT with essay instead of subject tests. These are things that you need to work with your college counselor and your student to research exactly what they should be taking. I would recommend, if you have a student who's in AP Bio as a junior or as a sophomore, to have them do the subject test right after the class rather than waiting till their junior or senior year. If they are really strong in the class and they're scoring like 90 or above, then it does benefit them to do the subject test at that time if they think they may want to go to school for science or something like that. If they wait, they're going to forget everything that they learned on it. A couple of notes about the different subject tests. A lot of the colleges will look more at math level 2 than math level 1. Math level 2 goes a little bit higher into calculus. Languages are the percentage and the average for what students are scoring in languages is really high because a lot of native language speakers will take that test. So unless you're really, really, really strong in the language and almost fluent, it's probably not a good idea to take the language test. But again, it's something you should talk to your counselor about. How much time do I have? I talk really fast. All right, so this is the testing timeline. It kind of is an overview of everything that we talked about tonight. If you look, if you're a sophomore, you'll see up here the PSAT in October. The only thing you really need to worry about now as a sophomore is whether or not you're going to take any SAT subject tests. Junior year is really the big year for testing. And junior year is a super busy year. You've taken the PSAT, and then in the spring you will take the SAT or the ACT. Senior year is kind of your last chance to take the SAT and the ACT. So that's what the testing timeline looks like. Really talk to your counselor again about what's going to work best for you, what SAT you should be taking. If you're a junior, you might want to take the March SAT if you're in a lot of AP classes because AP exams are in May. It really depends, again, on your schedule. but this is a breakdown of when everything is offered. So now that you know all about the different processes and the different tests that you're going to take, you're probably wondering what you should do, because this is a really overwhelming process, but it is really easy to prepare for these exams, and there are so many options out there. So the first option is self-study. You have that quick start login. You can use that to look at questions and kind of study from there. You can go buy a book for your student and they can study with the book. How many of you have bought your child an SAT book to study with? Where is it right now?
I have no clue.
That's what happens most of the time. The SAT is really boring. A lot of students will buy the book, will look at it once, and then it will sit on their desk for a couple of months. That's what I did when I was studying for the SAT. If you have a student who is diligent enough to do it themselves, then I would highly recommend having them do that. It's probably the cheapest option, and if they can really work through everything, they're gonna do great. For most students, that's not the best way for them to study. They're just gonna leave the book, you're gonna have no idea where it is. The best value is a group course. The group course gives your student a chance to really learn and practice the test, learn all of the strategies on the test, how to take the test really effectively, and really gives them everything that they need. If you have a student who is not so strong in a lot of the areas, then you might want to think about private tutoring because it's personalized. It will really ensure you get the maximum score, and it will really allow you to work with the tutor one-on-one to make sure your student is hitting everything they need to work on. So what options do you have here at the school? Revolution Prep runs a group course at the school. It's going to be starting in January, leading up to the March exam, and then we'll have one in March leading up to the May exam. It is a 6-week course. There are 18 hours of in-class instruction and 5 full-length practice exams. There's also a lot of online resources. We have Revolution Live sessions, which include study sessions with the teacher throughout the process. We do customized homework based on the students' exam scores. So even though it is a class environment, we do try to really give the students as much custom attention as possible to make sure they're getting the most out of it. All students who do our group course will also get 2 live online booster classes, which will allow them after the class to study for SAT subject tests, which we talked about, AP exams, and different areas on the SAT that they may need extra work on, or the ACT. We also have private tutoring. We can really do that to fit your schedule. We will personally match a tutor with you based on what your student needs to work on and their personality. All of our planning will go online. We're very, very open with you, and they'll still get a chance to take our proctored practice exams. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Oh, I didn't even go to the next slide when it says Revolution Opportunities. Oh, yes. Oh, the computer stopped and still record me?